the other format, let's see, we're also going to be doing a short meditation this evening, and we're going to have an overview of the nervous system health. We're going to dive deep into areas that really support optimal nervous system health, explaining like how the nervous system impacts our chronic disease on a daily basis and also long term. We're going to talk about mindfulness practices, awareness, and meditation to help bring you back to that center of your being. And we're also going to touch on environmental factors that can be shifting your stress from a minute to day to hour to week-long chronic event. And also, we're going to talk about nutritional planning for reducing stress, which is key to adding those awesome nutrients back into your diet and life. We're going to touch on some how to let go, releasing toxins that are affecting the body and the mind and nervous system. And then we're going to present a life-changing opportunity at the end to integrate all of this that you've learned today to support your optimal health, nervous system, and chronic disease. We'll have a little bit of Q&A time at the very end of the session this evening. So next I want to just introduce the other two doctors that are going to be joining me this evening. So I'm Dr. LuLu. I'm practicing in Asheville, and we also have Dr. Beebe Dericks. She's going to introduce herself now.
Hi, I'm Dr. Beebe Dericks. I'm a naturopathic doctor, acupuncturist, and Chinese herbal medicine practitioner, and I'm located in Seattle, Washington, and I'm really excited to be here tonight.
Yay, thanks. It's so good to have you, Beebe. And Dr. Jonathan Carlson.
Hello, I'm Dr. Jonathan Carlson. I practice in Shoreline, Washington, and I'm also a naturopathic doctor. I specialize in helping people with chronic disease and managing their stress to help alleviate their symptoms and eventually the chronic disease that they have.
Awesome. That sounds great, you guys. Thanks so much for joining me this evening from the West Coast. And this recording, or, oh my gosh, record. I'm pushing record now.
I already did it.
Oh, thanks, Jonathan. Thank you. So we're recording this session, so if you need to tune out at any time, we'll send out the recording at the end of the session this evening so you can listen to it as many times as you like. Okay, first I'm just going to touch base on the bucket model, and I'm going to show, let me make sure that we're seeing my screen here. Okay, are you seeing, can you see the, Jonathan, maybe the webinar screen? Is it showing?
I see the webinar screen, yes.
Okay, great. So now I'm just going to touch base on the bucket flow model before we move on into the next phase of what we're going to talk about this evening. So the bucket is, if you're looking at this picture, some of you might be listening via your phone, but so I'm going to talk about the bucket. The bucket is basically a symbol of what's happening inside our body. And as we have these outside stressors coming in, the entire way our body functions in life shifts and changes. So if you think of this bucket, all these stress factors are going in and contributing to your chronic disease. For instance, maybe you have a job that's really hard and causing you a lot of stress, or maybe you're taking a lot of prescription medications, or maybe you're having to eat a lot of really toxic food, or maybe you're living in a toxic home environment with a lot of mold, or maybe you're living near a plant, something that's contributing to your whole respiratory system. And then exposure to heavy metals is a big contributor because, as you know, our society is completely changing with the amount of pollution that we have, and we're being exposed to pollution in an environmental way, which is having a greater toxic load or greater heavy metal load affecting our bucket. And then the other part of that bucket is the mother and prenatal aspect. So that's everything that comes into our body via DNA, from conception through birth, from the our past generations. And studies have shown that goes all the way back to now to 6 generations past. We're bringing that DNA. So that's why I guess I love my Irish relatives for that strength and vigor we have for life. Thank you for that. But this big bucket is our body, and as that bucket becomes filled and begins to overflow, we begin to have symptoms of toxicity. So today we're going to talk about how to release that bucket, open that spigot up, and create that amazing flow, allowing the toxins to leave the system. So that's kind of a good little summary of that in the beginning. I'm going to move back to that slide here. Okay, and then Jonathan is going to do a great little tune-in to our bodies now. So I'm going to shift it over to you, Jonathan.
Thank you, Lulu. So one of the things that I've seen with my patients is that as people get into disease states and have suffered from chronic disease for a long time, one of the things is that I work with them to help them get connected back into their body so that they can understand and feel what it's like when their nervous system is balanced, and also what it feels like when there's stress in there. And then we work together to implement different tools to help them manage their stress and ultimately alleviate the symptoms of chronic disease. So what I would like to invite everyone to do right now is I will lead you through a meditation. It will be a body scan. It will be rather short, but hopefully potent in its impact about being able to actually allow you to feel what's happening in your body. So I invite you to find a comfortable place to sit or stand, and place one hand on your chest, one hand on your belly. I'd like you just to, you can allow your eyes to close or keep them open, however you decide is best. And I'd like you just to notice your breathing. As you breathe in, begin to notice what parts of your body are actually moving. With your next breath in, I'll invite you to bring your attention down to the bottoms of your feet, noticing how they are contacting the ground, noticing what they feel like on the inside. Notice the colors that might come, what the space or the sensations are that you have in your feet. And as you begin to notice those, just notice them and let them go. As you bring your attention up into your ankles, noticing what is the space like in your ankles. Can you tell the difference between your left and your right? As you allow that focus to continue to move up into your shins and your calves, notice what that space feels like. Are there any images, thoughts that come up? Any spots that might feel tense? No need to change them, just notice them as your attention comes up into your knees. Do you notice the tension there, or is it relaxed? Just allow them to softly relax. You're bringing your attention up to your thighs. And as you're moving up your thighs, noticing, can you tell the difference between the top and the bottom of your thighs? Bringing your attention then into your hips. I'm curious if you're able to notice how things change when you move from the upper half or lower half of your body to the upper half of your body. And as you move into your hips and your belly, what does that space feel like? What are the sensations that you notice in your belly? Bringing your attention to your ribs, a diaphragm which separates your belly from your chest and helps you breathe. Notice as you take that breath in, that movement again. Take a few breaths noticing that. And then allow your attention to come to your lower, middle, and upper back. What sensations do you have there? Beginning to notice your shoulders and your arms. How are they changing as you begin to observe them? And then allowing your focus to come to your neck, your throat. Does that feel open, closed, restricted? Is it holding anything back? And as you move up forward to your jaw, noticing any open spots or tension. And then allowing the focus to go inward to your mind. How are your thoughts? What is the energy like in your mind? Taking a few breaths, notice the top of your head. And notice where you stop and the rest of the world begins. Take a few breaths, just digesting all of this sensory information that you just gained. And think about one word that would best summarize the feeling that you have right now. Take a few breaths, and each time you breathe, just recite that word to yourself. Now I'm going to invite you from this calm space to imagine a moment in the past week or two that you felt very stressed. I want you to notice the image of you actually being in that moment. Picture the faces of the people that may be there or animals. Notice the colors. Now I invite you to tune in to the sounds of that situation that created stress in your body. Now watching that, I'd like you to actually turn up the sound and the volume of those noises a little bit more. Become more clearly aware of the visual cues, the colors. Is there a scent? Notice all of those things. And now notice what changes in your body as you start to think about it. Just simply thinking about that situation. What has changed? Taking a couple breaths, I want you just to notice what's the word that summarizes your feeling right now. Is it different? Now that you've had that experience of both sides, I'm going to invite you to take a couple breaths, and I'll pace you on them. We'll do a little bit more of this later when we talk about how to release things. Right now, I just invite you to put your hand back on your chest and your belly, and begin by taking a breath in, and then exhale. Breathing in, and letting go. Inhale, and exhale. Breathing in, and exhaling and letting go. Breathing in one more time, and exhaling, letting go. I invite you to open your eyes when you're ready. What you may have just experienced is a change in your nervous system. At the beginning when we did the body scan, you may have felt yourself calm. Many of my patients talk about how they feel still inside. That's the parasympathetic nervous system, the part we sometimes hear referred to as the rest and digest portion of the nervous system. It's a part of our nervous system that's focused on long-term healing. And it's the key, one of the keys to helping manage the stress of chronic disease and alleviate the symptoms of chronic disease. The other part of the nervous system, which is also critical to our life, is our sympathetic nervous system. That's sometimes referred to as the fight or flight portion of our nervous system. that's the part that you may have heard the story about, when the lion's about to chase after you. You're going to either freeze, run, or fight. That's the fight or flight portion of the nervous system. When that part of the nervous system is engaged, it's engaged and intended to be engaged for short periods of time. And it is a part of our nervous system that's really focused mostly on keeping us alive in the short term. Physiological changes happen within your body when we live in a sympathetic dominated state, which many of us do with driving cars around, being in relationships that might be challenging, and we don't have these ways to discharge. And so that sympathetic state, which is really focused on short-term, ends up becoming a long-term state and leads to chronic disease. When we live in that state of a sympathetic dominant nervous system, the blood flow changes in our body. Blood flow comes from our hands and our feet, because in a fight we might be cut. And so we want to minimize the flow of the loss of blood. The blood flow goes to the brain. It comes away from the digestive organs and the reproductive organs, because those are things that are required for long-term health. And it goes to the big muscles in the brain. So practice of balancing the nervous system. And when we started to then do the breathing at the end, you may have felt that calmness start to come back in. That is, again, bringing in the parasympathetic nervous system. And breathing is one of the main ways that I see patients have tremendous amount of relief from their symptoms by simply learning how to breathe. We take between 15 and 25,000 breaths a day, and breathing is so important that if we do not do it for minutes, we will no longer be on this earth. We will perish. So instead, we are able to focus our breathing and have functional breathing for just a fraction of those breaths during the day. It will have tremendous impacts on our health. There will be more to come on this at the end. I'll actually do a little teaching around some breathing techniques, and that'll be something that you can come away with as a tool to practice in your day. So that's just an overview of kind of the general sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. LuLu is now going to talk to us about the nervous system and the neurotransmitters and how those affect chronic disease.
Great. Thanks, Jonathan. That was such a nice, relaxing meditation and tune in. I got a whole body release from my long day, so it was perfect. So yeah, I'm going to talk to you guys about neurotransmitters, one of my favorite things to talk to patients about, because it's basically like our communication throughout the whole system, like how one thing is telling this thing to do. It reminds me of the Lily Tomlin sketch. I think it was from Saturday Night Live. She's like on the phone and she's trying to put in all the things into the board. That's exactly what her brain is doing. It's trying to communicate with every aspect of our body all the time. So when we are in that state of stress, the neurotransmitters are big key responders. It's basically like we're like 911, I need help. But they're not always in the times of stress. But what happens is, as a neurotransmitter, let's say for instance, serotonin and GABA, those are the two big players for mood. And as we become in that stressed environment or stress state, the communication shifts. It's almost like you have, if you were thinking of a big river and you suddenly put a big rock in the river of communication, everything has to flow then around the rock to be able to get downstream for the final communication. So everything shifts and slows down in our whole role of communication in the body. So the key is really like what happens in that chronic disease state in relationship to stress. So if we're thinking about how a neurotransmitter is functioning, it's basically a role of communication. And as the stress is building up in our lives, like greater and greater, like that big onion, and more layers of stress, then the neurotransmitters respond less and less and less, or it's the complete opposite, and they'll respond more and more and more to compensate for the lack of communication that they're getting. So what we have to do is to go in and allow the stress to slowly let go, to be released, to allow those cells of the nervous system to be recharged and regenerated, to allow the body to finally have a release from stress. So then we have the communication door is then open to then allow a proper communication from one cell to the other, to say like, hey, it's okay for us to go to sleep. It's now our time to go to sleep if cortisol is really elevated. So some of the other hormones or neurotransmitters that can be affected, we have GABA and serotonin, we have the dopamine. Also the female or male reproductive hormones are also greatly affected. So I just mentioned cortisol has a lot to do with sleep, as well as DHEA. So there's a lot involved when it comes to the hormones and the neurotransmitters. But the key point I wanted to make with you guys is that when we're in that state of stress, and in a chronic disease state especially, these neurotransmitters are greatly affected. And how we're going to do that, we're going to give you tools today to really hone in and help release that stress and help release the toxicity of the cells to allow that dam, that rock that has been put in the river, to then be eliminated and have smooth flow. Yeah, okay. I think that's all that I have to say on neurotransmitters. Oh, I think I'm next too. I'll just keep on talking. All right, so I'm going to talk about movement, because movement is so key to releasing stress. And I wanted to talk about movement in relationship to toxicity. That's kind of the key, because I really think of stress as the key to toxicity of our society and our bodies, because that stress changes the whole system, the whole shift of how we function. And so if we think about movement, if we're stiff and in a stress state, like Jonathan was talking about, running from that bear, well, that's movement, but that's not really movement. I think of that as like that's like a high stress movement. And then if we're too stagnant, because we say we're in a chronic pain state, then there's no movement to allow for the cells to release the toxins that have been built up. So when we have the stagnation of blood flow, and Beebe is great about talking about this because she is an acupuncturist as well, so she knows how the needles can increase that blood flow. And when we're thinking about stress and stagnation, if you don't have movement, then your body can't release it in the brain, in the joints, in the muscles, in the organs, especially in the organs, because the organs are giving the blood flow back to the entire body. So even if it's just a little movement, you know, sometimes when you're in that chronic disease state, shifting into a new state of movement can be like jumping off a cliff or climbing a mountain for you, because it seems so far away from that state that you're in now. So little steps are the best way to get back on track for that. But when you're in movement, when you want to be in that movement state, just think about, like, maybe you're coming from work and you've had a really hard day. Just what would get the movement, even if it's just sitting down and doing some shoulder rolls or some head movement or doing some yoga. There's all kinds of resources, and you can reach out to me or the other doctors here for resources with that as well. And then take breaks from your constant job, or the constant position at your job, I should say. Like at my job, I'm sitting most of the time, but I try to get up and move around as much as I can, like go to the bathroom or get a cup of tea or talk to patients. So whatever your position in life is, like say you're taking care of the kids at home and you're really busy, like you want to be moving to allow the toxic cells to be released. Yeah, I think that was it. That's all I wanted to talk about. Movement. Let's do it. All right. Beebe, you're up. You're going to talk about food and the environment and how it's related to stress.
Awesome. So again, I'm Dr. Beebe, and I'm so excited to be here to share information about food and how food relates to chronic stress and chronic disease. And really, what my goal is tonight is to give you some tips to help you optimize your diet so that you can reduce your chronic stress. So I believe that food is medicine for our bodies. And I really love that Michael Pollan quote, eat food, mostly plants, or eat, let's see, I have it right here. I'll share it with you all too. Eat food, not too much, mostly plants. And if I could, I would add there with company, with good company. And the reason I say that is it's really important when we're eating our meals to be slow, to activate our parasympathetic nervous system. And that happens naturally when we're in good company. when we can share a meal with family or good friends, when we can really sit down, relax, and savor every single bite. And when that happens, we're absorbing every single nutrient that the food can provide us. And some of those nutrients are really crucial for helping the body deal with chronic disease, help reduce stress, like our B vitamins, like our omega fatty acids. All of those are incredibly important. And the only way that we can digest some of those more complex molecules from food is if we slow down and we activate that parasympathetic nervous system instead of that sympathetic. Because if we're running away from a dinosaur, right, or we're in a stress response, our body, the last thing it's going to want to do is digest food. It's going to shunt blood away from those organs into the lungs and the heart to get us as far away from that dinosaur as possible. So really just bringing us back to family, to friends, to enjoying, savoring every single bite. The next piece of advice that I want to offer for diet is increasing dark leafy greens. If you're on a blood thinner, I don't recommend that. Obviously, check in with your doctor. But dark leafy greens are so full of, they're just chock full of nutrients. I start my day with a big green smoothie that I do in the Vitamix. And I absolutely love it. I think it brings vitality beyond anything you could ever imagine. And also, one of the things I recommend is making sure that you're getting a good 40 to 50 grams of fiber every single day. And if you can do a vegetable smoothie in the morning, you're halfway there. So one of my big tips is that. I also recommend dark berries like blueberries. Any fruits and vegetables in season are going to be even more chock full of nutrients. And some of my all-time favorites, I mentioned those omega fatty acids. You can get those from wild-caught salmon. I wouldn't do farm-raised, but wild-caught salmon is very high and rich in those omega fatty acids that are so good for neurotransmitter health. I love blueberries for antioxidants, and good thing it's blueberry season. And I also love the idea of getting cultured. So making sure to get sauerkraut, kombucha, cultured fermented vegetables, because serotonin, which is one of our happy neurotransmitters, is secreted in the gut. And if our gut has dysbiosis or unhealthy bacteria, we're not going to be secreting the same amount of serotonin, and it's going to lead to stress and anxiety and also depression, which can really debilitate all of us, but especially someone who's in the trenches of chronic disease and stress and anxiety. Some other, really simple options that I'm including, because when I think of food, I have to always stop and remember that as a doctor, I have all this stuff at my fingertips, that I just take this information for granted. And so I love making sure that my patients know that I'm not a huge fan of dairy. I'm not a huge fan of gluten, that I really personally try and ditch processed foods. It's not the easiest thing in the world to do, but one step at a time, ditching one thing that is like a staple item in my house at a time really helps. I recommend ditching artificial sweeteners and caffeinated beverages if you can. I recommend swapping a little bit of green tea for that coffee, and remembering that for every vice, every caffeinated vice that you have, getting a good 8 ounces of water, of pure filtered water. So that's a huge one too. Just making sure, we talked about staying hydrated and movement, but we need to make sure that we're hydrating with water that our body can utilize in a good way, that isn't filling that bucket with more toxins. So if you guys have questions about water filters, reach out. We can give you some good ones. And of course, I recommend seeing your local naturopath. Some other ideas that I have are buying organic grass-fed meats. That is one of the most important things that you can give your body. Buying eggs and butter, because as we go up the food chain, especially with butter and cream and a lot of those dairy products, if you're going to do them, the toxicity gets higher as that concentrates. And then another huge one for regulating stress and anxiety as it relates to chronic disease is regulating blood sugar. That's a huge one. And so stress and anxiety naturally lead to an increase in blood sugar through the mechanism of cortisol, and it can work back and forth, where you can have high cortisol that's triggered by low blood sugar, and then it triggers stress and anxiety. And so one of my big tips for that is a handful of nuts before bed and a handful of nuts when you wake up first thing in the morning. And not only does that support stabilizing that blood sugar for you, it also is going to support your adrenal glands, which are responsible for the secretion of cortisol. So you can only think, it's like you see that crazy person running from that dinosaur, and I go back to it because it's such a good image. Well, think of how draining that is for the body. If we're stressed out and we're in that place all the time, we're we're not sustained. You know, there's no way that we can continue to do that. So we have to support the adrenal gland so that when we do shift into a high stress response, we can shift right back out with ease and, you know, kind of in and out, and know that sometimes, right, we need to be on, we need to be focused, and it's okay, but we also need to be off and relaxed for the majority of our day. A few other pieces for regulating blood sugars are swapping out any refined sugars that you have in your kitchen. So I think of like brown sugar, molasses, cane sugar, for things with lower glycemic indexes that can help you just stabilize that blood sugar all throughout the day. So honey, maple syrup, coconut, and date sugar are really good options that I absolutely love, and making sure that you're getting clean sources for those. Also, determining food sensitivities and intolerances. That could take a week in Costa Rica to figure out, dropping some hints for later. But food sensitivities and inflammation decrease the absorption of some of the most crucial nutrients that our bodies need to fight stress, anxiety, and help us heal from chronic disease. So making sure that if we have a dairy intolerance or sensitivity, that we're not putting those foods in our diets. And I know it can be challenging, but working with a practitioner who can support you through it is optimal and can absolutely get you there. Let's see. I just want to check in and make sure I'm giving you all the tips. So another huge thing is if you're preparing all your meals at home and you're not doing fast food or, you know, packaged goods, you have to make sure that you're planning ahead. So having a calendar can be really helpful. I recommend, you know, making a big soup in the weekend, and when you make that big soup, make enough for the whole week. So you can maybe do that for lunches, make maybe a pesto salsa or something that you can put on top to make it fun, spice it up. And if you're going to chop vegetables, you're going to go through the extra effort in the kitchen. I would recommend, you know, that you chop enough for a couple of days, right? So that when you're hungry, which is the time that we usually, you know, go to eating something like a comfort food that isn't so good for our body, when we're hungry and we open the refrigerator, we have another option aside from that comfort food that we can easily, quickly go to support our bodies. So with planning ahead, some of the tools that I have that I absolutely love are websites like nourishingmeals.com and theminimalistbaker.com. Two of those they're just absolutely phenomenal, and we can obviously share more with you, but I recommend checking those websites out, getting, you know, an idea for what those blogs offer, and maybe writing down a few recipes that you want to try this week. So that's my tidbit on food, and I'm going to pass it off to Lulu for staying hydrated and the importance of water.
Okay, great. Thanks, Beebe. Those were some amazing tips for eating healthy and reducing stress. I really appreciated the information you gave about low glycemic index and cortisol, because that's such a key in our stress, the way our body responds to stress. And that is such a hard place for the adrenals when they're running from the bear or the dinosaur to try to balance that blood sugar. So that was great. Thank you. All right, so I just going to touch base about staying hydrated, which Beebe mentioned. And, you know, hydration, we think about, everybody talks about, oh, you got to drink water, blah, 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 blah. But it's really important. And why is it important? Because that's how we get the stuff out of the system, right? If your body is in this dried up desert state, how are you going to get the toxins out? They're not going to leave. And in that chronic state of stress leading to chronic disease, it's like almost like uber important to stay extra hydrated, because we're really working, especially if you're in a chronic pain state, lubricating the joints and the muscles and allowing for that shift to happen. And when I was talking about the river before, we can, you know, that's water. And if we think about that as our body is this river, and as we ebb and flow through the life of staying hydrated, the cells then become live and vibrant, and they're able to replicate in this amazing way, right? You can think of like, oh, I'm like a little dried up raisin. How am I going to replicate? Well, it's because you're nice and big and vibrant that then you have this amazing ability to become this. John is laughing at me. And you can have this great ability to make a new cell, which is able to then nourish your entire body. So if we're talking about stress and chronic disease, take a moment to think about what that means to your body if you're able to have this cell that's being created each moment that you drink water, that is shifting you into a chronic disease, a freedom from chronic disease state, where that chronic disease is leaving your body. That's how I like to think about when I'm, some patients will say like, oh, I don't like to drink water. It just takes up too much time. I have to go to the bathroom. I'm like, well, it's actually good you're going to the bathroom because we want to have that stuff leaving the system. And drinking water. So think about like, I'd say like, thanks to the water. Like, thank you for helping me move these toxins out so that I can be in this freedom state of mobility and hydration. What other thing? Oh, just a little quick note, when you, as Beebe mentioned, when you are doing the caffeine, if you like to drink caffeine tea or caffeinated coffee, you want to make sure that you're compensating that with your water intake, but especially staying away from caffeinated beverages when you're in a state of stress and chronic disease after 12. Because your cortisol levels are just going to be super highly affected. And remember, that's a neurotransmitter. We want to have open communication to tell our body to go to sleep. All right, let's see. I think I'm continuing to talk to you guys about the cells a little bit more and letting go. So as I was just talking about with hydration, when we have the cells, so again, let's take a moment to think about that raisin image that I just gave you guys. So if we have a cell that is really tight and holding on, so our cells are filled with mitochondria, which are basically like these energy powerhouses, and they're constantly making energy for our body. But when they're in this kind of state of, maybe you could say they're unhappy. They're toxic. They're not really like loving being in your body. They actually want to be let go. So the real key question is, when you have stress affecting the cells and the cells become in that kind of dried out, unhappy state, how do we let them go? How do we let that toxicity leave the body? How do we let the stress go to then become in this freedom state, free of that chronic disease? Well, that's because we then provide our body with the nutrients and the key elements it needs to open up the tube or open up the pipe of our body that is clogged with stagnation, clogged with toxicity. So again, in that river model, we want to remove the rocks, remove the junk, remove the trash that is causing little hiccups in our water flow. And so if the cells are hydrated, they're going to be able to move down the river and be able to let the body go and ease. And through nutrients and providing the cells the actual communication process that they need to replicate to make a new cell provides the ability to let go. And I wanted to talk about sleep, which I mentioned a little bit before. Sleep is the key to everything. Like, I think stress is key to relieving stress, and sleep, we want to have more sleep. So they do that like inverse. And so with the sleep, we want to make sure that we're getting restful sleep. Like, that's one of the key things I always talk about patients. Like, so you're sleeping. What's your sleep like? Are you waking up in every hour? That's not restful. And what happens when you're not restful? You're not recovering. You're not healing. Because nighttime is when we're healing. Say for instance, if you had in that chronic disease state that you're in, your body needs to have so much more rest than it needs in a regular state, a normal state, because the cells are having to work like, oh, so much harder to actually get to that place where they can rest. So that's why you're feeling more tired or more fatigued. Chronic fatigue is because that's what it stems from. It stems from the fact that your body is needing the rest to heal because it's been layered with the toxicity. So getting full 8 hours is key. If you can't get that, at least try to get 6. But fully rested, unless you have a new baby like Beebe, or you have 2 babies like Jonathan, maybe they don't sleep. But no, they do. They take the time to sleep, right? They make sure, because they have to function as doctors. They have to help their patients, and they have to be right on and in the moment. And so knowing when, it's listening, again, back to that communication, listening to the keys from your body, like, well, I'm not really sleeping good. What's happening in my life? Is the stress contributing so much to my disrupted sleep that my chronic disease state is just out the window? It's so high. And so make sure you're talking to your naturopathic doctor about how you can use your sleep hygiene techniques to get back into that sleep rhythm, that circadian rhythm. Okay, Beebe's going to talk about laughter.
All right, so on that note, Lulu, I'll be in touch with you later. I think I want you to be my naturopathic doctor and help me recover
Okay.
from my sleep deprivation. So I'm a new mom, and so I think this ties in perfectly. So tying in this idea of being stressed out, having so many, things on my plate, and then going back to work, I found, and then recovering from a childbirth is absolutely huge, and then having to gracefully tend to and nurture and care for a little one, which I absolutely love doing. It's a lot. It's a tremendous feat for any human, any mama and papa, and my heart goes out to everyone who's ever had children. But with that in mind, I find with my husband, it can be really difficult at times where we're sleep deprived, we're exhausted, we're recovering, we're healing, we're trying to get everything done during the day. And then we'll have a moment where our little one will have, an explosive diaper, or something that brings us to like complete laughter, right? Where it's like everything melts away, right? Like every worry, every care in the world melts away, and we just share this like uncontrollable laughter. And so what I want to talk about is laughter as medicine, because it's medicine for me in my life right now. And I love my daughter for everything that she brings, but I especially love her for keeping things light and and bringing more laughter into my life than I've ever had before. So thinking about laughter and why it's so important is it lowers cortisol, which is a stress hormone. It helps to increase endorphins and helps lighten our mood naturally. And so I think of it like it detoxes the mind. It gives us this clean slate where we let everything go, and then we decide what we want to pick up, what's really important for us in that moment to pick back up. And when we have choice, we get to heal and we get to stand sympathetic or parasympathetic. I also recommend to keep that laughter going if you don't have a newborn with explosive diapers around your house, because they provide a lot of entertainment. I recommend watching your favorite movies. When you have a really bad day, go to the movie theater. Call a friend, ask them to tell you, your favorite joke or your favorite story. Maybe, call your mom or your dad, or if you're not, connected to your family in that way, call someone that will be able to cheer you up with a good joke, or watch, the funniest movie or comedy you've ever seen. And if none of those work for you, I recommend literally just sitting down and maybe, with a glass of kombucha or something cultured, just starting to crack up. Because as you start to laugh, your body's going to start to secrete those endorphins, and it's going to start to lower cortisol, and you're going to have that same response, even if it's forced. So fake it till you make it. It really works. So on that note, I'm going to pass things off to Jonathan to talk about some mindful breathing.
Thank you, Beebe and Lulu. I really appreciate the simplicity that a lot of these techniques, they're pretty simple things to do, and they're also pretty difficult to do at the same time. But really, they're foundational pieces. If you hear what we're talking about, there are things like breathing. You can live minutes without air. There are things like water. You can live days without water. Things like sleep, that you can live weeks without sleep. And finally, food. You can live months without food. And really, the foundational aspects of supporting your wellness comes down to making those small little choices and choosing these little things to help support these processes that are required for our life. They're the most foundational pieces, and really the most powerful pieces for us to make change. And so while they may sound easy to do and they may sound small, they're sometimes really challenging to do, and you need support. And so connecting with the naturopathic doctor, connecting with a community of people who are also can help support you in this is really important. So I'm going to spend just a moment talking about mindful breathing, and specifically I'll give a little precursor into a technique that's focused on balancing your nervous system. That's the state that healing really exists. And I'll talk to you about different components of breathing that are important to take into account. One of the components of breathing that's important is to focus on how you're breathing, how your body is actually taking in air. And these, I won't get into all the details of it, I'll kind of give you the high level of it right now. But you want to ensure that your posture, when you're practicing your breathing, that your posture is one that can allow air to easily flow into your belly. And if you're slunched over like this, you can actually access that diaphragm muscle, and that's important in balancing the nervous system. I also encourage people to practice breathing in and out through their nose, which warms the air that's coming into your lungs, makes it easier for your lungs to process that air, and also slows down the breath that you're taking. And that brings me to the third point, which is the rate of breathing that you do. Most people are breathing at a rate between 12 and 18 breaths a minute when they come into my office, and in a lot of medical textbooks that says that that's a normal rate. However, there's been a lot of research done around heart rate variability and its and how it's related to health in the long term. And when we are breathing at a rate more around 6 breaths a minute, that's one in and one out per 10 seconds, that you end up more in a balanced state, and it's again supporting that nervous system balance and ultimately alleviating symptoms of chronic disease. And one of the most important things that I focus on with people is the inhale-exhale ratio of breathing. And so it's important that you actually inhale for a shorter amount of time than you exhale. You want your exhale to be longer than your inhale. And that has to do with the sympathetic nervous system is activated as you breathe in. And as you exhale out, that parasympathetic and rest and digest portion of the nervous system is engaged. So all these aspects of this breathing that we'll practice for a minute and a half or so here, they all are tied to balancing the nervous system. There's a lot of different ways of breathing and pranayama that can do all different types of things for you. This one specifically is focused on balancing your nervous system, and whether my patients have chronic pain, like complex regional pain syndrome, or whether they have autoimmune diseases, or whether they have ulcerative colitis, or irritable bowel syndrome, or anxiety, depression, or they're suicidal. These are foundational techniques that support health, and that's why I come to them so frequently. So I will again invite you to put your hand on your chest and your belly, and I'm simply going to pace you on some breathing, and I'll do this for a minute and a half. We'll take 9 breaths, and just notice what changes in your body. So begin by taking a breath in and exhaling out. And transitioning to a breath in and letting go. Breathing in and let that tension go. Breathe in the goodness of life through your nose. And exhale out any stress from the day. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and exhaling, letting go. Inhale and exhale, letting go. Breathing in. And again, noticing as you begin to exhale, how are things changing in your body? And one last breath in and exhaling out. Now allow your breath to slowly come back to its normal pace. When I'm teaching this breathing, I'm not expecting or asking people to breathe at 6 breaths a minute for every moment of the day, every day of the week. But what the research shows, what my clinical practice, and what some of my colleagues that do this work find is that when people are practicing this 20 minutes a day, 5 to 7 days a week, they have profound impacts on their health, and they see wellness start to begin pretty quickly, start to enter into that life, and they notice little changes which ultimately become the big changes that you're all looking for. So with that, I will just allow you to ponder as you're going through the day, just taking a few breaths just like we were doing. There is one tool I will point you to It's an app that you can download for your phone. It's called Virtual Hope Box. And in the Virtual Hope Box, there is a tab called Relax Me. And in there, you can set a breath. There's a breath pacer that is one that I often use with patients. I recommend setting that to a 6-second, a 4-second inhale and a 6-second exhale, and practice that, starting off 5 minutes a day and working your way up to 20 minutes a day. If you find yourself lightheaded, you are breathing actually too deeply, and so don't take as big a breath as you are. It's likely that you're hyperventilating by taking in too much air. So play around with that. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me after the call. And Beebe, I'm going to pass this back over to you for our last little bit about gratitude.
Great. So Jonathan, LuLu, I'm sincerely grateful for both of you and for all of you listening in on the call. On that note, I want to share a little bit about gratitude, having a practice of gratitude every day to just bring us back to ourselves, to who we are, what we're truly thankful for in this world, and the people that we love and want to express and share that love with. So I actually love when people have this practice of gratitude and they can share one thing that they've been blown away by, absolutely grateful for during their day at dinner with their spouse, a loved one, a friend, or even a journal. And so I recommend, if you don't have a practice like this, creating something, because what we're getting at here is integrating all of these pieces into our bodies, our routines, allowing us, right, like a woven quilt, to come together in the most relaxed yet flexible kind of way where we can go with the flow of the day, with all of the flow of the day, right? When there's like tension and stress, we can go with that flow. When there's relaxation, we can be there and be present. And I feel like gratitude among breath, among meditation, is one of those things that really helps us to come back to ourselves and our bodies and the parasympathetic nervous system, where we can heal, where we can digest, and where we can detoxify, bringing it back to that bucket model. I also want to share a little tidbit about visualization. So in all of Jonathan's breathing exercises and meditations, one of the things that I love is if there's something I'm tuning into within my body that I really want to create, I visualize it. It's kind of like that laughter idea, fake it till you make it. I visualize that I'm where I want to be. And I'm going to share a quick story before the end here, but I had worked with a patient who had suffered a stroke 8 years prior. He came in to me for acupuncture, couldn't move the entire right side of his body. We did one session, and the swelling, the edema that he had went away completely. He comes back the next time, and he can wiggle his toes. But that's not enough for him, and it's not enough for me. And so what I did is I worked with him for a course of 4 months, letting him know that I wanted him to see, to visualize that he could walk, that his body could move, that he could have it back. And within a period of 4 months, he was able to actually not walk, but move the entire side of his body that had been paralyzed. And not only do I attribute it to the amazing work, to the shifts that he did for himself, and the incredible perseverance that he had, and the strength, right, to face this goal in the eye and really give it his all, but the visualization, that piece, the piece of like seeing himself moving is what I think got him there. So and on that note, I just leave everyone with that idea. If there's a place you want to be, free from chronic disease, free from stress, from suffering, I invite you to imagine that you're already there and visualize what that's like, and come home to that and be grateful for it at the end of the night. Thanks.
Yeah.
So now to LuLu.
Back to me after that. I'm so grateful for both of you guys and for everyone attending. I hope this has been great. I just wanted to touch base on one more thing. We mentioned in the beginning that we have an amazing opportunity coming up in Costa Rica in the end of October, beginning November, and we have created this amazing retreat. I can't wait for it, and it's the three of us, and we're working at this new shift of medicine, working together. So you have this team of doctors working together with you in a very small atmosphere, shifting your entire chronic disease state to allow your body to release that chronic disease. And there's nothing in this entire planet like what we're going to be doing. And so we wanted to share it with you because we've created this project and I can barely stand it because I'm so excited. So let me pull up. I wanted to show you this. Let's see if that works. I think I have to do this. Yes. Okay, you guys can see that now. This is my website. You can find out more information at www.doclulu.com if you need more information. So I'm not going to read through this. I just wanted to show you this little section right here. So we created this 3 phases of this retreat, which is really the part that changes your entire paradigm of chronic disease, your entire being, because we're going to wake yourselves up by giving you a pre-part of the retreat where we're giving you all this amazing information even before you get to the retreat. And then during the retreat, you're going to be embracing all of these classes and learning techniques and allowing yourself to discover what the possibility and the actually, like Beebe was saying, the vision of holding the space for this new body, this new being that you're creating. And then after the retreat is finished, which I mean, I can't even tell you all the amazing things. There's going to be like great food, and where you're going to learn about different hydrotherapy techniques, and going to a spa in Costa Rica. We're going to be doing herb walks, and I mean, it's just it's like so just off the hook, you guys. And for the last phase, which is a part that we created, which I really like, is that you continue after the retreat, after you go home, because usually what happens when you go to a retreat, you're like, wow, that was great. Well, now what do I do? So we're like, well, we felt like there was something missing. So we created a section for afterwards, where then you reintegrate all of the things that you learn and you reclaim your life back. Because once you're back in your life, that's where the stress comes back in. All those things. And so we teach you during the retreat techniques to bring back into your life, and then in the phase 3, how to reclaim those techniques as your own. So it's going to be great, and I wanted to just mention that to you guys. If you need more information, Jonathan, Beebe, do you want to say anything about it? Did I hit all the high notes?
I think you hit all the high notes, Lulu, especially the fact that, you know, when I've attended retreats in the past, I felt completely alone at the end. And so I've also felt completely alone in the beginning. Like, what am I jumping into? How can I prepare myself so that I have the most optimal, engaging, you know, life-changing, shifting experience? And so we've really created a modality here that allows us to embrace you in the beginning, to hold you in the end, and to allow structure in the middle that just creates the most fulfilling and enriching experience ever. And as Lulu mentioned, it really is state of the art. All 3 of us are coming together. We have different specialties and practice, but trying to accomplish and work towards the same thing. I just think it's the most incredible thing that I could ever offer a patient is, you know, the experience of working with both Jonathan and Dr. LuLu, as well as myself in Costa Rica, in an environment where you can really relax, shift into that parasympathetic mode, and create a vision for yourself.
Vision. See a beach in your future.
Yeah, and the only thing that I'll add to it is that really this is formed out of, in a lot of ways, about building community, and LuLu, Dr. LuLu, Dr. Beebe, and myself have been a community and family for a long time. We've known each other, and we want to extend that out to our patients and allow our patients to connect out and have a community and understand that you're not alone in this process, and really that support can really be healing just in itself. So we are looking forward to seeing you there, and welcome you. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to any of us, and we would be happy to fill you in on more details.
Thank you.
Yes, and if you need our contact information, you can see on this slide here, and you can also you can reach out to me if you want to get in touch with Dr. Beebe and Jonathan, and Dr. Jonathan, and you didn't remember. I can always forward you right on to them. So there's that slide again for you for that information. I think we're ready for Q&A time, right, guys? Woohoo! Okay, let me open up the lines. So if you have a question, you can click on the hand and raise your hand up, and then I'll click on you, and you can just say whatever you want. If you have a question for us, if you have a question about anything we talked about today, if you have a question about the retreat, or just a question about anything, what's the meaning of life? I'll try to answer it. Chocolate. Not really, but maybe. But yeah, if you have a question, raise your hand, and we can help answer it for you. Anybody? You know you want to ask it. Burning question. Oh, there's one. Kim has one. Let's see. I gotta open Kim up. Unmute. Kim, you're unmuted. Welcome.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to say thank you so much for all three of you with sharing all your knowledge. It was amazing. I learned a lot, and Costa Rica sounds amazing. Sounds absolutely amazing, and I hope a lot of people take advantage of this, because I can see a lot of healing in the future for those people that do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thanks, Kim.
Thank you, Kim.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm gonna mute you back. Muting. Okay. Anybody else? Anybody have any questions? Oh, I need to lower.
And for those of you who maybe don't want to share questions so openly, we're happy to email, responses to questions. You could even ask them on LuLu's Facebook page,
Mm-hmm.
a little bit more anonymously, kind of, if you wanted. But that's a nice way. I know.
Yeah, sort of anonymously on Facebook. And you can also, yeah, like Beebe said, you can email us for sure. And then if you're listening to this afterwards and you weren't able to attend live this evening, please feel free to reach out to any of us with any questions. We love to answer questions and help patients and help you regain your freedom from your chronic disease, because that's our passion, is really like getting people to that next level, like envisioning what your life can be like. That's really my last thing I want to say. Like, this is the moment in time where you can dream as big as you want to dream for who you want to be, and the three of us, we work together to create that vision, which is our life work.
And we're really here to hold that space,
Mm-hmm.
to see it through.
Yeah. Okay. I think that wraps everything up for this evening. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and we'll let you know when we have some great more talks like this coming up. I don't think this is going to be the only one for sure. No. And just another little tidbit, we're working on the same kind of thing where you can see us as a patient with seeing the three of us virtually. So if that's something that like really sparks your inner healer, your inner love for learning, this is a great new thing that we're creating too, because that shift of really creating a new form of medicine, that's what we're doing. And so using us as your three guides for health is pretty much the most amazing thing that could happen to you. I'm just kidding. But okay, so good night everyone, and we look forward to seeing you again in the future.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
night. See.